we were going to do the second installment on that the Quran is the Word of God, the proof that the Quran is the Word of God. One of the claims you hear frequently repeated among Muslims is that evidence that the Quran is miraculous is that no chapter or surah can be duplicated of the Quran. And critics of this will point out that the challenge is so vague, there's no way to know what they mean by that. And there are Muslims who try to explain what that means, and they get into the details on the effectiveness and influence of the Quran down through Arabic history. But again, you'd have to be a scholar in Arabic history, or at least listen to scholars of Arabic history, to get an idea of what influence the Quran has had in the history of that language. So, there's a lot more involved when you start appealing to these things. But there's other people who have duplicated surahs or chapters in the Quran, and the Muslims say, well, no, it doesn't meet the criterion. So there's no way to, and it even says in the Quran that it can never be done. So how do you evaluate this claim? Again, it's a weak claim to be evidence for the Quran as the Word of God. And other things you'll hear, you can find lists online of prophecies that are supposedly found in the Quran, and scientific evidences that predate science regarding the proof of that the Quran is the Word of God. And you can find, I encourage you to read those, look them up. I'll try to put some examples of that. But when you look at what the Quran says in a lot of these prophecies or scientific advanced revelations, and you read the actual context of the Quran, to me it's pulling it out of context. And I've seen Christians do this with the Bible. They try to find stuff that the Bible is giving you advanced revelation and stuff of scientific discoveries, and it's some of it is a stretch, and so we don't want to get into that. But that's not a good form of argumentation. And you'll find just as many lists or more of scientific errors in the Quran, so you got to evaluate these things too. If you have a list of so-called scientific evidences that the Quran had advanced revelation, and then you have a corresponding list of errors that it made, is it the Word of God at that point? And so we got to evaluate these things a little bit more critically. And the nature of what we're doing here as presuppositionalists is we're saying that in order to evaluate evidence to begin with, there have to be certain things that are necessarily true. Like there have to be laws of logic that apply to all reality, to thoughts, and to the physical world. And that they have to be laws that are invariant, absolute, that they don't change, they don't mislead you. And there have to be laws of physics that don't change, that are uniform, and also that our ability to think rationally and to analyze the physical world would require that we have a mind that can participate in these abstract laws and reason about the physical world. So in order to evaluate evidence, what we're saying is that you have to presuppose these things that are only true if what the Bible teaches about God is true, as we've stated in our presuppositional playlist, which I encourage you to go back and listen to and establish yourself in presuppositionalism. But the Quran can't point to evidences and say the proof that the Quran is the Word of God is this evidence, because in order to evaluate evidence, you have to presuppose the conditions of rationality. So you have to already start with that. And what we've been saying the whole time is the Bible does that 600 years before Islam shows up. And so that you got to contend with that. You got to evaluate that. And to point to, that somebody can't duplicate a surah according to standards that are completely unknown and unstipulated is not good evidence. And so we encourage you to, to be aware of these things, and look into, what their claims are, and understand that, again, regardless of what evidence is offered, there are preconditions that are necessary to evaluate evidence, and that's what we're trying to say here, that the Bible provides it and Islam does not. All right?